The rhythmic sound of sandpaper against wood filled the small garage converted into a studio. Elias Thorne, a 62-year-old man with deep expression lines around his eyes, was meticulously working on an architectural model. His hands, though aged, moved with the precision of a surgeon. The phone vibrated on the workbench, breaking the concentration he had maintained for the past 3 hours. "Dad?" Chloe's voice sounded different over the phone. There was a contained excitement, something rare in their usually brief and practical conversations. "Is something wrong?" Elias asked, wiping the sawdust from his hands with a well-worn cloth. "I'm engaged." The words rushed out as if she had rehearsed them many times before finally saying them. Elias's silence lasted only a second, but it was enough for Chloe to quickly add, "His name is Julian Croft." Elias smiled, genuinely happy for her. Despite the pang of sadness that came from knowing so little about his daughter's life. "That's wonderful, dear. When will I get to meet him?" That's when it began. First, a barely noticeable hesitation, then the elegantly crafted evasion. "He's traveling for work right now, maybe next month." Next month turned into the month after, and each call brought a new excuse. Julian was busy. His family was very private. Wedding preparations consumed all their time. One Sunday afternoon, sitting in his favorite worn armchair, Elias finally confronted his daughter over the phone. "Chloe, it's been 3 months. The wedding is in a few weeks. When am I going to meet my future son-in-law?" The silence on the other end was different this time. Heavier, more final. "Dad, maybe it's better if you don't come to the wedding." The words hit Elias like a physical blow. "What do you mean, not come? We're talking about your wedding." Julian's family, they move in very different circles. It would be complicated for everyone. Awkward. Awkward? The word came bitterly from Elias's lips. "Am I awkward for you, Chloe?" "That's not it." Her voice rose an octave. "It's just that you have your little business, your simple life. The Crofts are important people." Elias felt something break inside him. It wasn't anger. It was worse. Disappointment. Without saying anything more, he hung up the phone. Through the window of his modest living room, he watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange. His eyes fixed on the photographs above the mantel. Little Chloe, smiling with 2 missing front teeth. Teenage Chloe, far too serious for her age after the divorce. And then, the empty space where the last 10 years of photos should have been. Something was wrong. It wasn't just snobbery. His daughter had changed, but not that much. As night fell, a suspicion began to grow in Elias's mind, along with a quiet determination. 3 days later, Elias parked his old Volvo 2 blocks from Ethel Red, a restaurant where, according to casual mentions Chloe had made in past conversations, she used to have lunch with clients on Wednesdays. The place exuded exclusivity, with its red brick facade and mirrored windows reflecting the hustle and bustle of the street. Dressed in the only suit he owned, Elias entered the restaurant and chose a discreet table in the corner, partially hidden by a decorative column. 20 minutes later, Chloe walked in. She looked stunning in her business suit, her brown hair elegantly pinned up. A young man approached her, tall, athletic, with perfectly styled dark hair and a suit that likely cost more than Elias's car. Julian Jr., he presumed. He watched them talk, their body language revealing a controlled intimacy. Chloe's smile seemed rehearsed, her gestures studiedly graceful. There was none of the spontaneity he knew in his daughter. It was like watching a play. Then a third character entered the scene. An older man approached their table, emanating a natural authority. When he turned his face toward Elias, the world seemed to stop. Julian Croft Sr. The recognition was instant and devastating. 20 years had passed, but Elias would never forget that face. The man who, through fraud and manipulation, had destroyed his architecture firm, ruined his reputation, and played a significant role in the collapse of his marriage. The coffee cup trembled in Elias's hand. Dark drops stained the white tablecloth as he struggled to regain control. With deliberately slow movements, he paid the bill and left, his mind racing with questions. How had Chloe met the Crofts? Did she know about their past? Was it possible this was just a terrible coincidence? In the car, his hands gripped the steering wheel tightly enough for the knuckles to turn white. There was only one person who could help him understand what was happening. David Rios's office occupied half of the 10th floor of a downtown commercial building. 20 years earlier, he had been the financial director at Elias's company. Now, he was a respected forensic accountant. "Elias Thorne," David smiled, embracing the old friend. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," Elias replied. "I saw Julian Croft." The smile vanished from David's face. Without saying another word, he led Elias to his private office, closed the door, and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. "Tell me everything," he said. For the next few hours, Elias explained the situation, the sudden engagement, Chloe's evasions, the discovery at the restaurant. With each new piece of information, David's expression grew more somber. "There's something very wrong here," David concluded, adjusting his thin-framed glasses. "The Crofts never do anything without an ulterior motive." "I need to know what's going on," Elias insisted. "My daughter might be in danger." David hesitated for a moment before responding. "I can investigate their finances, discreetly, but it will take time." "How long do we have until the wedding?" David asked. 3 weeks, Elias replied, feeling the weight of urgency. "Then let's get started now." The next 3 days were a deep dive into the Crofts' financial world. David leveraged his contacts, while Elias contributed his meticulous memory of the behavioral patterns he had observed 2 decades earlier. They worked tirelessly, eating takeout and sleeping on the office couch. On the 4th morning, the complete picture began to emerge, terrifying in its clarity. "It's a Ponzi scheme," David explained, spreading documents across the table. "Croft sells shares in luxury real estate ventures that are never actually built. He uses money from new investors to pay profits to earlier investors, creating the illusion of success." "How did no one notice this?" Elias asked, examining the papers. "He's extremely careful. He operates through a web of shell companies. Plus, his investors are powerful people who don't want to disclose their investments. Where does Chloe fit into all this?" David sighed deeply. "His empire is crumbling, Elias. Payments to older investors now exceed the influx of new money. He needs one last big capital injection to escape before everything comes crashing down." "The wedding," Elias concluded, understanding dawning like poison in his veins. "It's a facade." "Exactly. A lavish event to convince billionaire investors of the Croft family's stability and success. Julian Jr. needs to appear established, respectable. A beautiful, intelligent bride like Chloe completes the picture." "She doesn't know any of this," Elias murmured, suddenly feeling exhausted. "Probably not," David agreed. "And when everything collapses, she'll be right in the middle of it." Elias was silent for a long moment, absorbing the gravity of the situation. Then, with renewed determination, he asked, "What can we do?" David adjusted his glasses again, a nervous habit. Alerting the authorities would take too long. Croft would flee before any investigation could start. "Then we need another approach," Elias said, rising to his feet. "Something more direct." His eyes fell on the architectural plans for the Peninsula Hotel, where the wedding would take place. Slowly, an idea began to take shape in his methodical mind. "Project Phoenix," Elias announced, placing a red folder on David's desk. "Our way of rising from the ashes that Croft has created." David examined the meticulously organized dossier Elias had prepared, charts, documents, financial analyses, all presented with the precision of an architect. "Impressive," David commented, "but who are we going to give this to?" "Marcus Harrison." David's eyes widened. The Marcus Harrison, the billionaire investor known for his obsessive caution? Elias nodded. "I confirmed he'll be at the wedding. If we can get this information into his hands, it'll be over for the Crofts in minutes." "How do you plan to get to Harrison during the ceremony? Chloe made it clear you're not welcome." A discreet smile appeared on Elias's lips. "Remember Michael Delaney? The chef? Your client from years ago?" "Exactly. He's now the owner of the catering company serving the wedding. I've already spoken to him. I'll start tomorrow as a shift supervisor." David shook his head, torn between admiration and concern. "You really thought of everything. But it's risky, Elias. If the Crofts find out—" "What can they do?" Elias interrupted. "Destroy my reputation? Ruin my career? They've done that once. I have nothing left to lose." "Except your daughter," David observed gently. Elias's face hardened. "I'm doing this for her, to save her from a disaster she doesn't even realize is about to hit." In the following days, Elias familiarized himself with the catering service's routine. He learned the names of the other staff, memorized the menu details, studied the floor plan of the grand ballroom where the reception would be held. Every move was carefully planned, every contingency considered. On the night before the big day, Elias sat alone in his office, staring at the phone. He almost called Chloe so many times, almost told her everything. But he knew she wouldn't believe him. She'd be too caught up in the Crofts' web of lies to see the truth. Tomorrow, he promised himself, tomorrow she would know everything. The grand ballroom of the Peninsula Hotel gleamed with ostentatious luxury. Elaborate floral arrangements adorned every surface. Crystals sparkled under the light of antique chandeliers, and a chamber orchestra played softly in a corner. The atmosphere exuded wealth and exclusivity. Elias, dressed in the black and white uniform of the service staff, moved discreetly among the guests. From a distance, he watched Chloe in her wedding dress, a stunning creation of silk and lace that made her look ethereal, almost unreal. His heart ached and he noticed the disguised tension in her eyes, the smile that didn't quite reach them. Julian Jr. played the part of the lovesick groom perfectly, but Elias caught revealing moments, a look of boredom when Chloe turned her face, the way he discreetly checked his watch during the vows. At the main table, Julian Croft Sr. reigned like a monarch, charming potential investors with his calculated charisma. Beside him, Marcus Harrison wore a neutral expression, observing everything with keen eyes. The ceremony unfolded like a well-rehearsed spectacle. Vows were exchanged, applause erupted, champagne was served, and then it was time for the speeches. Julian Croft Sr. took the stage, glass in hand, ready to deliver words that, Elias knew, would be as false as everything else at this event. That was Elias's cue to spring into action. With fluid movements that masked his inner tension, Elias approached the main table, carrying a tray of ice water. He strategically positioned himself near Marcus Harrison. As Croft Sr. spoke of family, integrity, and a bright future, words that sounded like insults to Elias's ears, he executed his carefully planned move. A calculated stumble, water spilled onto the tablecloth, momentary confusion. "My apologies, sir," Elias murmured, wiping the table with a napkin. In the process, he swapped Harrison's menu for an identical copy containing the hidden Project Phoenix dossier. Harrison barely noticed the exchange, still focused on Croft's speech. Elias stepped back, his heart pounding against his ribs. Seconds later, curiously, Harrison opened the menu. His expression gradually transformed as he read the hidden content, first confusion, then disbelief, and finally, controlled fury. Harrison stood up quietly and left to make a phone call. The investor beside him, intrigued, picked up the abandoned dossier. And just like that, like a silent wildfire, the information began to spread among the powerful present. Elias watched everything from a discreet corner, witnessing the destruction he had meticulously planned unfold with relentless precision. Minutes later, 4 men in suits entered the ballroom. There were no alarms, no shouts or confusion, just their presence, moving purposefully toward Julian Croft Sr. Low voices exchanged words. Croft's face visibly paled. Julian Jr., sensing something was wrong, abandoned Chloe in the middle of a dance and approached his father. Chloe stood alone in the center of the dance floor, confused and helpless as her fairy tale crumbled around her. Elias removed his jacket and walked toward his daughter. Around them, chaos silently settled. Guests hurriedly leaving, security blocking exits, Julian Jr. and his father being discreetly escorted to a side room. Chloe remained still, as if frozen in time. "What's happening?" she asked when she saw Elias approaching. "Dad, what are you doing here? Why are you dressed like that?" Instead of answering immediately, Elias took off his jacket and draped it over his daughter's delicate shoulders, which were now trembling slightly. "Let's go home," he said simply. "I don't understand," she insisted, tears beginning to well up in her eyes. "Julian, the guests." "I'll explain everything on the way," Elias promised, "but right now we need to get out of here." He gently guided her through the ballroom, passing groups of people talking in tense, worried voices. No one stopped them. No one seemed to care about the bride leaving her own wedding. In the car, during the silent drive to Elias's house, he explained everything. Who Julian Croft really was, the scheme he was running, how the wedding was just part of a larger plan to lure in final investors before everything collapsed. Chloe listened in silence, the wedding dress piled around her like sea foam. "How did you find all this out?" she finally asked, her voice small. "I'm an architect," Elias replied with a sad smile. "My job is to see structures from the inside, to understand how things are built, or how they can collapse." In Elias's modest kitchen, sitting at the wooden table where Chloe had done homework years before, father and daughter shared a moment of healing silence while he prepared tea for both of them. "I'm so sorry," Chloe finally said, wrapping her hands around the warm cup as if seeking comfort. "For everything, for shutting you out, for believing them instead of trusting you." Elias reached for his daughter's hand across the table. "Sometimes we need to get a little lost to find our way back." Looking at the simple man before her, hands calloused from work, a face marked by time, eyes filled with quiet wisdom, Chloe saw her father clearly for the first time in many years. "How did you manage to do all this alone?" she asked, amazed. Elias smiled. "Never underestimate someone just because they live a simple life, Chloe. True strength isn't measured by bank accounts or social circles. Sometimes it's in quiet integrity, methodical patience, and the willingness to do what's right, even when no one is watching." As the sun rose on the horizon, casting the first golden rays through the kitchen window, father and daughter sat in comfortable silence, both aware that this was just the first of many sunrises they would share again. If you enjoyed this story of redemption and justice, don't forget to like, comment on what you thought, and subscribe to the channel for more exciting narratives like this one. Your interaction is what motivates us to continue bringing stories that touch the heart.